Such a commotion. Just when I thought I could enjoy a little peace and quiet.
Oh, lady, pregnant.
Welcome back everyone, and let me just say that thank you for the incredible response to the Q&A. It's something that I was not expecting when I posted it up on Reddit. I just wasn't expecting this level of hype for Xenoblade, and it really makes me excited to share with you guys this amazing, incredible game and this series. I'm glad there are so many fans out there. I'm glad that you're all raring for more info. So the original plan for this part 2, which I never even really planned to do a part 2 at all, but then I had a list of 50 questions from a single person, and that person is on screen at the moment. And I was just going to rapid fire answer these questions, sort of a little fun part 2 video, but I realized that a lot of this stuff is stuff I have either already answered, stuff I cannot answer or talk about at all, or stuff that other people have asked. And since I got so many questions on Reddit and on the first Q&A video, I decided to just do a proper part 2 Q&A. And so I'm going to answer God knows how many questions that you guys have sent me, and let's do that right now. So question number 1 comes to us from Skazuto. To what degree can you control your other party members in battle? Can you tell someone who's using a damage blade to swap to a healing one, as an example? Well, you don't really have control over your party members at all. There is a single function called focus, and you can press that. It's, I believe, the left analog button, and you can press that, and that'll just basically mean that all other characters focus on the target that you currently have targeted. But outside of that, you can't really control them directly in battle. What you can do is encourage them into certain roles by giving them certain blades. So if you want to have a designated healer, you can put 3 healing blades on that character if you want to. If you want them to be a tank, you can do the same. Or if you want to have them as a mix, as I have been using Naya for, the AI seems to be pretty intelligent about switching. So when you do get low on health, it does switch to a healing blade automatically. And when, say, the enemy you have has been toppled, they will switch to a DPS blade. So the AI is pretty good. You shouldn't really need to control them. JRPG Central asks, how is the music in the game, and where does it rank with XC and XCX? The music is actually incredible in this game, and it didn't actually hit me at first, as in I didn't think, wow, this music is really, really good. And then only after about 5 hours of playing it, this is back when I first got the review copy, I found myself whistling one of the town tunes, like one of the town themes, while I was cooking dinner. So it immediately had an impact because they are incredibly catchy, and the more I listen, the more I'm blown away by the music in the game. It doesn't seem to have as much variety as Xenoblade Chronicles X, for example. It doesn't seem to have as many tracks, but then again, I haven't finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2 yet, so I don't know how that's going to go. Data4664 asks, thanks, I have questions. Is it many secret areas? I'm guessing, is there many secret areas? And there's plenty to explore. We'll say that. And it is fun to explore, which is your next question. Cool bosses? Yes, there are some really cool bosses. Funny side quests? Yes, the humor in this game is actually really good. It's not forced like in Xenoblade Chronicles X. You know, it's not Lyn making that joke about eating what's his name all the time. It's just genuinely funny at some points. Monado, question mark? Well, Pyra kind of is Monado. I mean, she looks like Monado. There is no Monado in the game as far as I know, unless it's an Easter egg, but Pyra is definitely modeled after the Monado from the first game. The Space King 12. I have two questions. My first is in regards to the docked visuals. You mentioned that it's a little weird on a 4K TV, so much so that it was better in handheld mode visually, but if you have, say, a 1080p TV, will it still look alright? When I said that it looks a little weird on a 4K TV, I don't mean it looks bad or it looks weird. It's just that things are always going to look better at their native resolution. So when it's running at 720p, it's obviously going to look better on a native resolution 720p panel, which is what the handheld just happens to be. But it doesn't look bad, even on the 4K TV. It's still very much playable, it's still quite a beautiful looking game, and the current TV that I'm playing it on is the one I use to record footage, so I'm getting prepped for the review, and it is a 1080p screen, and it looks just fine. My second question is in regards to how well the Switch's battery holds while playing this game. And it does cut off here, but you asked if you could estimate how long it lasts for, and I would say that it's actually really well optimized in that way. It lasts longer than Breath of the Wild for me. So, I mean, I'm gonna say 3.5 hours maybe. I haven't done a full test in handheld mode before because I haven't actually gone anywhere with it. I've been stuck into it at home. So, I have noticed, you know, when I've just taken it around the house, it doesn't really drain the battery that fast. No more than any other game, really. Supersonic Bro asked, is there any amiibo functionality? The Shulk amiibo is crying to be used. Yeah, the Shulk amiibo is crying to be used, but unfortunately there is no amiibo functionality in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, at least not that I have seen. There doesn't appear to be any as of yet. That doesn't mean that there won't be some in the future with the Season Pass content. I know you can't say anything about the story, but so far, which did you enjoy more, X1 or X2? And that's from Mike Totarella. I prefer Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I don't think I can say much more than that, really. It's just better, I think, in pretty much every way. Char Aznable is some voice work genuinely considered bad if it doesn't match how the character looks, especially if things like the line delivery aren't an issue. Now this is something I mentioned in my first Q&A video, and I did pick this question because I wanted to expand on the voiceover, the English voiceover. I have not got access to the Japanese voice work yet because the Japanese audio DLC will be going up on launch day on the eShop. So we're all forced to play with the English voiceover at the moment. Generally, I prefer English voiceovers because I can understand English and I can't understand Japanese. And there is scarcely ever a game that has such bad voice acting that makes me want to switch. I can handle some bad voice acting. And as I said in the first Q&A video, the voice acting is not bad in this game, and there are some really, really good performances. There are some standout performances, there are some amazing voice work, and the voice work itself is good, as in it's professional. You know, the delivery and everything like that is fine. It's just the voice choices, the accents, just in general, the match to some of these characters. They don't really convey what the characters are animating, if that makes sense. So, you know, if one of the characters is angry, the voice that they've chosen for that just doesn't sound that angry. And they are trying to be angry, but the voice is just wrong. And this may be something to do with the fact that Nintendo of Europe did the localization for this, and so a lot of the voices are various European accents, which is something that most people, especially in the JRPG world, will not be used to. So there are a lot of British accents, there are a lot of Scottish accents, there are a lot of Irish accents, there are a lot of European accents in general. And having so many of these in a game that is usually dominated by American voice work is a little jarring to begin with. But I still feel that some of the voices are just completely wrong. Having said that, the voice work in general is absolutely fine, or even better, some of them are outstanding. NBMTX says, is Morag the best, or what's up, question mark? Morag is the best. At least that's all I can say at the moment, because I'm restricted to covering chapters 2 and 4 for now. Lucid Gate, are there any quests to unlock special blades or equipment? Unfortunately, I can't really say anything. I will just say that there are many, many side quests and there are many, many ways to unlock blades. BP1696 asks, sounds great, can I ask something? Sorry I don't have a Reddit account, so I'm probably using the Japanese voiceover. Have you seen any option to have subtitles for overworld dialogue, victory dialogue, etc.? I don't know if I'll like not knowing what the characters are saying when you find a new landmark and whatnot. As I said before, we don't have access to the Japanese voiceover DLC yet, so I don't know what the subtitles situation is going to be. Obviously there are going to be subtitles in cutscenes, and I imagine that there are going to be subtitles out in the world because the characters are very vocal at all times. So I imagine there is going to be some kind of subtitle, but I cannot confirm at this stage. Richard Hannay says, does the review embargo lift up on December 1, the release date? The review embargo lifts in Australian time, Australian Eastern Standard Time at midnight on December 1st. This is, I believe, roughly, it's either 16 or 18 hours prior to the US launch. So in Australia we're about 18 hours ahead, and so that's when the review embargo lifts. Official OTT Gaming asks, can you de-equip special blades like Pyra and use 3 other rare blades instead? At the moment, and strictly speaking from about chapters 2 and 4, because it's the only thing I can cover, I have not been able to de-equip Pyra. But that is just that's just my experience so far. I don't know whether or not you will be able to de-equip them at later times. And also, just chiming in on that one, there is obviously reasons why you can't de-equip them at the moment. It makes story sense for it to be a permanent blade from what I've played so far. Gen01 asks, I want to know how stable the frame rate is. Is it a solid 30 FPS or are there some dips? That while you're generally playing, it's a pretty solid frame rate. I think they compromise more on adaptive resolution than they do on frame rate. Having said that, there are some consistent areas of slowdown, but it's generally not it's not all of the time. What I mean is that when you fast travel to a certain town, while it loads stuff up, the frame rate is slower. But then once it has fully loaded all of the areas, once everything's popped in, the frame rate is back to normal. So I would say that it's pretty solid, and for where it counts, it's totally fine. It doesn't wreck the experience or anything. It's not like every time you get into a battle, you drop down to 15 FPS or anything like that. It's actually really solid. Edge Dono, kind of surprised that no one asked this, so I'll go ahead and ask it now. Any other dub options in your copy of the game? French, Japanese, German, and so forth. So the Japanese DLC will become available on the eShop for free for everybody on launch day, but at the moment it's only English in this version that I've seen so far. I don't know if other languages will be supported, but at the moment it's only English and Japanese that I know about. Flamey Serpent, I'm wondering, is there any affinity chart with NPCs, or something at least to feel that the people are alive? So there are no specific affinity charts for random NPCs. Every rare blade has an affinity chart, every normal blade has an affinity chart actually, but NPCs have their own sort of thing. The world feels alive, the towns feel alive, the people feel alive. Every NPC is distinct, and you can talk to pretty much every NPC in the game at one stage or another, and some of them have different have sort of like their own kind of character progression in the background that you don't see, and it's not obvious, but sometimes you'll talk to a NPC and they'll have something to say, and then you'll come back later on, you know, it might be hours down the track, and they'll have a new piece of dialogue that is directly related to what they were talking about before. So just as an example that literally didn't happen, I'm just doing the crappiest example ever, but you know, say you walk up to a guy and that NPC says, hey, I'm going to go out fishing because I'm hungry, and then you come back like 8 hours later and he'll have a little symbol above him that means new dialogue basically, and you talk to him, he says, hey, I just got back from my fishing trip and I caught all this fish, I'm going to, you know, something like that. So they do have some sort of progression, and also For talking to NPCs, it goes towards raising up your town level. There is a level for a progression level to towns. That means it's a star level, a star rating basically. And the more you unlock, or the higher, you go, the more stuff you unlock. The more stuff you unlock from vendors, the more side quests you unlock, and all that kind of stuff. So the world feels alive, the NPCs feel alive. Fireblend from Reddit asks, important question, is the title screen, visuals and music as good as XC's and XCX's? And also, how far am I into the game? The title screen, visuals and music are really awesome, are definitely on par with the other two. How far am I into the game? At current count, I am 55 hours and 46 minutes in. Pissarro the Manslayer? How are the side quests? Are they up to the same quality as Xenoblade Chronicles X, or are they simpler fetch quests like OG Xenoblade? The side quests in this game are incredibly involved. They have their own storylines, they have their own motivations, characters, it's all good. They're all very involved, they're all really cool. The quests are much more like Xenoblade Chronicles X, but I'd say they're even a step above that. There are scarcely any simple fetch quests, and if they are a fetch quest, they actually have some cool story progression and dialogue and characters to go along with them. Stairmaster_, how is the combat compared to the previous games? Looking at it, I find it hard to think it would surpass XCX, but it does look as good as XC1. The combat is much more involved than it has ever been in Xenoblade. You have to be constantly moving, you have to be, or not constantly moving, sorry, but positioning is important, and you also have to be doing things, you have to be using abilities. You can't just stand around and auto attack. The enemies are dangerous, especially unique bosses and unique mobs and things of that nature. It's really involved, you have to actually do stuff. Also, how difficult are builds, grinding-wise? Any crafting involved? Is there more options like XCX, or is it more reserved? Unfortunately, I can't talk about most of that stuff. There are affinity charts, and a lot of it comes down to the blades you choose, and there are also a bunch of different equipments and stuff. Yeah, it's just, I can't really talk about it, but it's pretty involved. Belcoot. I loved Xenoblade and did not like Xenoblade Chronicles X. Is this more similar to the first installment? Yeah, think of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as it's numbered. It is definitely the sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles 1. And I'm not saying it's like a direct sequel, as in you need to play Xenoblade Chronicles 1, because you really don't. You don't need to have played any other Xenoblade game, or any Xeno game at all for that matter. You can go straight into this. But it is definitely the direct spiritual successor to Xenoblade Chronicles 1. It has much more in common with Xenoblade Chronicles 1 than it does Xenoblade Chronicles X, but it is a combination of the two. The exploration is much better in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 than it is in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, but not quite as good as in Xenoblade Chronicles X, and it has a much stronger story focus than Xenoblade Chronicles X does. Digger4567 says, thanks for sharing a great deal of information with us. I am a newcomer to the series and I have almost made up my mind and that I will get this game, but just to make sure, I have a few questions. First up, I just want to comment on that thanks for sharing a great deal of information. Look, I have this privilege, I have this honor of playing this early. I have this awesome opportunity to play this early, and I want to share that with people. I want to share JRPGs with people. I want to share what I enjoy with all of you. So it's totally fine that I'm doing this. And yes, it's a lot of work, to be honest with you, editing down like half an hour's worth of me just talking and getting all the right questions and stuff like that. But I want to share with you guys. It's totally cool. And now for the questions. Number 1, as the mechanics of combat are explained and you start to get the hang of it, does it feel like you are doing a great deal to lead the fight to a victory rather than just the game doing many things for you? And based on multiple footages of the game, Rex mostly uses skills like rolling smash and sword bash. Does he get to use a lot of cool skills as he levels up and get new blades, or even though it's just Pyramithra. So the combat, as I said before, is incredibly involved. It's much more involved than other Xenoblade games, and it requires you to do things. You cannot just auto-attack your way to victory unless the creature has to be super, super low level. You have to be like 15 levels above it to just auto-attack to victory. You have to be doing things, otherwise you're just going to die, or the fight will just last like 45 minutes, because the auto-attack is really one of the more minor parts of this combat system in comparison to the other two. And as for the other things, so each blade type, so each weapon type has its own set of skills. And there are many weapon types, so you might have a mega lance or a mega axe or the sword, and so they all have their own set of skills that are completely different from other weapons. And all the blades also have unique special abilities, and they're the ones that you charge up. So there is a lot of cool stuff there, and there's a lot of variety. Darkian 3x3, is there alternate clothes and armors to the main character? I'm on the side with other people that really disliked his design. Not from what I've seen. I cannot answer that definitively, but I have not seen any kind of alternate costume, or I haven't seen any mechanics in the chapters I'm allowed to cover, which is 2 and 4. I have not seen anything in there to indicate there are. Having said that, there is a season pass with lots of DLC, and it wouldn't surprise me, but I cannot confirm anything I don't really know. Artorias Abyss Walker 6. Do the male blades also have interesting outfits? My fiance and I want to get it, but she'll be upset if I'm the only one that gets eye candy, winky face. Okay, there are plenty of husbandos in this game. The women aren't the only ones with interesting and risque designs. There are plenty of, yes, as I say, there are plenty of husbandos in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Miguelito, another reviewer made a comment suggesting that some core crystals can only be bonded with certain characters. Can you deny or confirm this is true? There wasn't anything specific in the embargo, and I think that it comes up in chapters 2 and 4, but just to be on the safe side, I will just say now that the majority of blades can be switched, but I cannot confirm or deny that some are stuck to certain characters. Mortalest. How is the general atmosphere? I liked the more serious tone from Xenoblade Chronicles in comparison to most JRPGs, but I fear they changed the tone in this game, like the art style, to an over-the-top happy-go-lucky anime level, which is a big downside for me. I'd be happy if you could answer that. Okay, so first up, the art style change wasn't to make it more light-hearted. The art style change was to allow the developers to show more emotion in the character animations, and it's worked. The facial expressions are especially good in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 compared to the other two. The biggest criticism for Xenoblade Chronicles X for a lot of people was that the characters didn't really have emotions. They were more like lifeless dolls. And that is the furthest thing from the truth with this new change in art style, and I dig the art style. I like it a lot, and I really don't find that to be an issue at all. And people going in expecting this to be some sort of happy-go-lucky story or lighthearted story are way off the mark. It is just as serious a game as the other Xenoblade games, and there obviously is humor and funny stuff and comic relief just like any good JRPG has, but it's done really well in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The story definitely has a serious tone though. You're not going to don't go in expecting some sort of like Sailor Moon, a magical girl thing. Omega Metroid 93. It seemed like there is no indicator to tell if a monster is a unique monster or not before you fight it. Is there a way to tell, or do you just kind of have to experiment? So they're unique monsters, you can sort of call them mini bosses, but they're just unique monsters they're called. They do have a special symbol above their heads, and also they have very distinct names. So, you know, if you see a bunch of things named whatever the monster type is, and then you see one bigger guy with a weird symbol above his head, and his name is like Sniping Brent or something, then you obviously know that that is the unique monster. ShareBear 42019. How's the enemy variety? It's incredibly varied. There are so many different enemy types, even in just these chapters 2 and 4, which I am allowed to cover. And I know I keep saying that, by the way, the chapters 2 and 4 thing, but I'm just reiterating that all the stuff I'm talking about is from chapters 2 and 4, because in keeping with the embargo and the spoiler-free stuff, they're the only things I can cover. Apart from stuff that's already been shown off in trailers, but that's pretty much just chapters 2 and 4. So the enemy varieties that I've seen so far are really varied. There are some really cool designs. There's plenty to go out there and see and kill. MNK907, how is the ratio of male-female rare blades? Unfortunately, I just can't give you a number or even a ratio or a percentage. I'll just say that there is a good mix of both genders. NeoLeo2143, have there been any big moments on par with the emotional heights of Xenoblade Chronicles 1? I can't go into specifics for obvious reasons, but yes, this story is really good. There are some really touching parts, even in chapters 2 and 4. Only here for hip-hop. Well, why are you here then? Xenoblade Chronicles is not hip-hop. You damn liar. But can you sprint like in XCX? One thing that sucked about XC was how slow it felt to move around sometimes. You cannot sprint in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I do miss, that big long jump sprint that was in XCX. But having said that, you don't move incredibly slow. And there is also a sort of a vendor buff thing you can get that increases movement speed, but it's really not needed. They have done a good job at not making traversing the world feel like a slog. You run pretty fast in general, you can move around, explore at a pretty decent pace, and there are also fast travel points all over the place, so it's not a slog like the original Xenoblade Chronicles. Relic NT. Any missables? Is this the kind of game that will require a guide to get all the best stuff? There are no missables from what I've seen so far. There has never been a place that I've gone that I can't go back to at a later date. And I really don't think that that is going to be something that's in this game. It would only hamper the world and the exploration that they've built up in this game. So I don't think there will be any missables. Naruhodo-kun. Is the game censored in any way? And by the way, this is the final question. I thought I would end it on something that is generally quite controversial. But is this game censored in any way? No. From what I've seen, it's not censored at all. I have seen not one piece of censorship in this game at all. There are some incredibly risque blades, there are some incredibly risque outfits, and none of them have been censored whatsoever. There are even some really risque voice lines and text. None of it has been censored. It appears all completely uncensored. I know that's what some people like to hear. I really don't mind an odd bit of censorship if it needs it, to get into that better age rating. Obviously, we are different from the Japanese culture in the West, so sexuality in the Japanese culture is a little bit more open in games than it is over here. But having said that, as I say, nothing I have seen so far has been censored, and some of the rare blade entrances, and I can't talk about which ones, but some of them are, wow. At least a couple of them are going to make my review, because some of them are just, yes, quite risque, I will say. So that wraps it up for now, everybody. And look, the big 50 question thing, there was a couple of things on here I think that I wanted to just talk about, but I think I covered most of it anyway. So yeah, and it's just, stuff like how many hearts to hearts are there and stuff like that. Is there amiibo support? I've answered a lot of this stuff, or it's just stuff that I can't answer. As I say, I'm restricted to covering only chapters 2 and 4. That is part of the embargo. It's why I have been incredibly careful about what I say in these Q&A videos, because I'm in keeping with that embargo. I like to think that I have integrity, and I don't want to be spoilering everybody. I don't want to have to put spoiler alerts on everything I'm doing here. I just want to give you guys answers and spread some of the love for this game and this series. So that is all for now, guys. I believe I am done with the Xenoblade Chronicles Q&A. It's less than a week now until it's out, and you'll all get to experience it. It is an incredible game, an incredible experience. I'm gonna kick back in and keep playing some more, getting that recorded footage ready for my big review on launch day. I will continue to answer questions on Reddit and possibly in the comment section of this video. So if you do have any lingering questions, don't feel afraid to drop them down below or on Reddit when I post this up. And look, If you guys want to check out my Patreon page, you can. You don't have to support me and I will never expect it, but for as little as $1, it goes a really long way in helping me do this kind of stuff more. Use the Amazon link in the video description to pre-order if you haven't already. I suggest you do that because it's an incredible game. I believe the collector's edition is in stock on Amazon at the moment, and it was on sale for $82 earlier today. So jump on it, guys, and I'll see you all soon.